Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people's story. This whole mess started about 2 years ago when my wife and I finally saved up enough money to buy our dream property. I work as a graphic designer and she's a teacher, so we're not exactly rolling in cash, but we're careful with our money and we'd been planning this purchase for years. The property we found was perfect for us. It was at the very edge of one of those upscale neighborhoods where every house looks exactly the same and the grass has to be cut to regulation height. The thing that made it special was that it came with 2 lots. The main lot had a modest but nice house, and right next to it was an empty lot that was almost as big. The seller was this elderly guy who just wanted to get rid of everything and move to Florida to be closer to his kids. Now, I should mention that I'm really into restoring classic cars. It's been my hobby for as long as I can remember, and I'd always dreamed of having a proper workshop where I could really dig into projects. The second lot was perfect for building a detached garage and workshop. That's literally the only reason we bought the place. During the buying process, our lawyer discovered something interesting about the property records. The house itself was officially part of the HOA, but the second lot somehow never got formally annexed into the HOA covenant when the neighborhood was first developed. The previous owner had been paying HOA dues on both lots for years without ever questioning it, so nobody had noticed the paperwork issue. Our lawyer told us this was pretty unusual and we should keep the documentation handy just in case. I made sure to get copies of everything from the county records office before we closed on the property. Something told me this information might come in useful someday. For the first year after we moved in, things were mostly quiet. Sure, we got the occasional notice about minor violations, like the time our garbage can was supposedly visible from the street for 2 hours past the pickup deadline. But overall, it wasn't too bad. The HOA president was this woman in her 50s who drove around the neighborhood in a golf cart with a clipboard looking for violations. She had this way of talking to people like they were children who couldn't be trusted to follow basic rules. She introduced herself to us about a month after we moved in by showing up at our door with a packet of HOA rules and regulations. She spent 20 minutes going through each rule, emphasizing how important it was to maintain property values and community standards. The whole time she kept glancing over at our empty lot like she was already planning what we should do with it. After saving for another year, we were finally ready to build the workshop. I spent months working with an architect to design something that would look good and complement our house. It wasn't going to be some cheap metal shed. This was a proper 2-car garage with a full workshop area. We got all the city permits, hired a licensed contractor, and even paid for a professional surveyor to come mark the exact boundaries between our 2 lots. The day the construction crew showed up to break ground was when everything went sideways. I was outside watching them set up when I heard the familiar whir of that golf cart coming down the street. The HOA president pulled up right as the excavator was getting unloaded from the trailer. She hopped out of her cart and marched straight toward the worksite, waving her clipboard around like it was some kind of weapon. The construction foreman looked confused when she started yelling at him to stop everything immediately. I walked over to see what was going on, and she turned her attention to me. She told me that I hadn't gotten approval from the Architectural Review Committee, and that building without permission was a clear violation of the HOA bylaws. She said I could face fines of $500 per day if I didn't stop construction right away. I stayed calm and showed her all the city permits we had obtained. I explained that everything had been approved by the municipal building department and that we were following all the proper procedures. That's when she really got worked up. She said the city's permission didn't matter because HOA rules superseded municipal codes. She insisted that any structure built in the neighborhood had to be approved by the HOA board first, regardless of what the city said. I decided to test something. I asked her if she was absolutely certain that this specific lot fell under the HOA jurisdiction. Just like I hoped, she puffed up her chest and told me she was the president and she knew exactly what was and wasn't part of the association. She said this land was definitely under their control and there was no question about it. She took pictures of the construction equipment and our permits, then stormed off muttering about how some people think the rules don't apply to them. The next day, we got an official cease and desist notice from the HOA. It cited the specific bylaw about architectural approval and included our first $500 fine. The letter said we had 24 hours to stop all construction or the fines would continue accumulating daily. I called our contractor and told him to keep working. We had all the proper permits and I knew something the HOA didn't, but I wanted to see how far they would push this before I played my ace in the hole. The HOA president wasn't done with us. She started going around the neighborhood telling people that we were building an illegal industrial workshop that would destroy property values. She said we were refusing to follow the same rules that everyone else had to abide by. Some of our neighbors started giving us dirty looks when we saw them outside. Every day brought a new $500 fine in the mail. After a week, we had supposedly racked up $3,500 in penalties. The letters got more and more threatening, warning us about legal action and liens against our property. On the second Monday of construction, things reached a boiling point. I was at work when my wife called to tell me that the HOA president had shown up with 2 police officers. She said the woman was claiming we were trespassing and building on HOA common ground. I left work immediately and drove home as fast as I could. When I got there, the 2 cops were standing near the construction site while the HOA president gestured wildly with her clipboard. Our contractor and his crew were just standing around looking confused. The HOA president saw me pull up and pointed in my direction. She told the officers that I was the homeowner who was illegally building on protected HOA land without permission and refusing to stop despite multiple warnings. The older of the 2 officers walked over to me and asked for my side of the story. I stayed calm and told him there seemed to be a misunderstanding. Then I went into the house and grabbed the folder I'd been keeping with all our property documentation. I came back out and told the officer that this was my land and it had never been part of the HOA. I showed him our deed for the second lot, the county plot map showing it as a separate parcel, and the original HOA covenant documents that didn't include our lot. I also had all our city-approved building permits. The officer looked through everything carefully, then walked over to check the survey stakes that marked our property boundaries. When he came back, he addressed the HOA president directly. He told her that according to the legal county records, this was a private lot owned by us and not part of the HOA territory. He said we had the correct permits and this was a civil matter, not a police issue. He warned her not to call cop for this type of dispute again. I'll never forget the look on her face. She went from smug and confident to completely humiliated in about 30 seconds. A few neighbors had come out to watch the commotion and they all heard the officer explain that the HOA had no authority over our lot. You'd think that would be the end of it, but the HOA doubled down instead of backing off. A week later, we got a much more serious letter from their lawyer threatening to sue us if we didn't demolish the structure and pay all the accumulated fines. That's when I decided it was time to stop playing defense and go on the offensive. I called the real estate lawyer who had handled our home purchase and explained the whole situation. When I told him about the HOA threats and showed him their letters, he got this smile on his face that told me he was going to enjoy this case. My lawyer spent a few days putting together a response that was absolutely devastating. The letter systematically proved with documentation that our lot was not and had never been part of the HOA, but then he included something I hadn't even thought of. Since the HOA had no jurisdiction over our lot, they had been illegally collecting HOA dues on that portion of our property. The letter demanded immediate reimbursement of all the dues we'd paid that were assessed on the second lot's value, plus interest as required by state law. But he wasn't done there. The letter also demanded a written apology for the harassment, the slanderous comments to neighbors, and for filing a false police report. It gave the HOA 15 business days to comply, or we would file a lawsuit seeking damages for harassment, slander, and recovery of the illegally collected fees. The HOA board apparently went into panic mode when they got that letter. Their lawyer must have told them they were in serious trouble because they called an emergency meeting within a few days. Meanwhile, our construction continued without any more interference. The foundation was poured, the framing went up, and it was starting to look like a real building. A few neighbors who had been cold to us started coming by to ask questions about the project. Word was getting around about what had really happened with the police visit. About 2 weeks after my lawyer sent his letter, we got a certified mail delivery. Inside was a formal apology from the HOA board and a check for over $4,000 representing all the dues we'd overpaid plus interest. The apology was pretty terse, and you could tell they weren't happy about having to write it, but it covered everything my lawyer had demanded. They acknowledged that our second lot was not part of the HOA, apologized for the harassment and false claims to neighbors, and promised there would be no further interference with our construction project. But the best part was what happened at the next annual HOA meeting. Apparently, the story of the police incident and the legal defeat had spread throughout the neighborhood. A bunch of residents who were tired of the heavy-handed enforcement called for a vote of no confidence in the board president. We didn't attend the meeting, but our next-door neighbor told us it was brutal. The president tried to defend her actions by saying she was just trying to protect property values, but nobody was buying it. The vote wasn't even close. She got voted out by a huge margin. The new HOA board is much more reasonable. They sent us a nice letter welcoming us to the community and saying they looked forward to having us as neighbors. They even complimented the quality of our construction project. The workshop turned out amazing. It's got plenty of space for 2 cars plus all my tools and equipment. The first project I completed in there was a 1967 Mustang that I'd been working on for years in our old garage. Having proper space and good lighting made all the difference. Several neighbors have stopped by to check out the building and apologize for how they treated us during the conflict. They said they had been misled about what was really happening, and they were glad we stood up to the previous board president. The property value in our neighborhood has actually gone up since we finished the workshop. Turns out having a well-built, attractive outbuilding adds value rather than detracting from it. The previous board president was completely wrong about that too. Looking back on the whole experience, I learned some important lessons about the value of doing your homework before making major purchases. If our lawyer hadn't caught that paperwork issue during the buying process, we never would have known about our legal position. Reading all the fine print and checking county records might seem boring, but it saved us thousands of dollars and a lot of headaches. I also learned that standing your ground when you know you're right is worth the stress and conflict. It would have been easier to just give in and follow their demands, but that would have meant giving up our dream workshop and letting them get away with their bullying tactics. The most satisfying part was using their own overconfidence against them. The former board president was so sure of her authority that she never bothered to check whether she actually had jurisdiction over our property. Her certainty became her downfall. These days, I spend most of my free time in the workshop restoring classic cars and building furniture. Every time I flip on those LED lights and fire up my tools, I remember the look on that woman's face when the police officer told her she had no authority over our land. The former board president moved away about 6 months after she got voted out. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she couldn't handle the embarrassment of staying in a community where everyone knew about her humiliating defeat. The new board actually asked if they could feature our workshop in the neighborhood newsletter as an example of quality construction that enhances property values. It was a nice vindication after all the grief we went through. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if we'd just backed down and followed their demands. We probably would have lost our chance to build the workshop, paid thousands in bogus fines, and set a precedent that encouraged more bullying behavior from the HOA. Instead, we got our dream workshop, a nice check from the HOA and apology, and the satisfaction of seeing justice served. The whole experience taught me that knowledge is power, especially when it's backed up by proper legal documentation. Now, when I'm working on a car in my beautiful workshop, I occasionally look out the window toward where the former board president used to live and smile. She thought her clipboard and her title gave her unlimited power, but my property deed and a little bit of legal homework gave me the last laugh, a brand new workshop, and a nice fat check from the HOA. I'd say I definitely came out on top in that fight. Update. A lot of people asked for an update on my HOA situation, so here's what's happened since my last post. Turns out the story wasn't quite over yet, and there were some pretty wild developments I didn't see coming. First, the good news. My workshop has been featured in 3 different home improvement magazines and a local TV segment about unique neighborhood architecture. The publicity actually led to me getting some freelance work designing custom garages for other classic car enthusiasts. Who would have thought that a spite building project would turn into a side business? But the really interesting stuff happened about 3 months after my original post. I got a call from a lawyer representing 5 other property owners in different neighborhoods who had dealt with the same former HOA president. Apparently, after she got voted out of our community, she moved to another neighborhood and somehow managed to get elected to their HOA board within 6 months. She pulled the exact same power trip nonsense there, but this time she picked the wrong targets. One of the homeowners she tried to bully was a retired federal judge who didn't take kindly to her threats and intimidation tactics. Another was a real estate attorney who specializes in HOA law. The lawyer told me they were putting together a class action lawsuit against her for a pattern of harassment, abuse of authority, and intentionally filing false reports with various government agencies. Turns out she had been doing this stuff for years across multiple communities. They asked if I wanted to join the lawsuit, and you bet I said yes. My lawyer was thrilled because we had some of the best documentation of her behavior, including the police report and all the threatening letters from the HOA. The discovery process was absolutely wild. We found out she had been kicked out of 3 different HOA boards over the past decade for similar behavior. She would move to a new community, get herself elected to the board, and then abuse her authority until the other residents got fed up and removed her. Even better, we discovered that she had been collecting personal payments from some contractors in exchange for recommending them to homeowners for violation corrections. Basically, she was running a little extortion racket where she would find bogus violations and then steer people toward contractors who were paying her kickbacks. The whole thing was way bigger than any of us realized. The former federal judge told me he'd seen organized crime operations that were less systematic than what she was running. About 4 months after I joined the lawsuit, we got word that she was ready to settle. Her lawyer apparently advised her that going to trial would probably result in criminal charges being filed, not just civil penalties. I can't share all the details of the settlement because of the non-disclosure agreement, but let's just say it was enough to completely pay for my workshop construction and then some. The best part was that she had to agree to never serve on another HOA board or hold any position in a homeowners association anywhere in the state. The judge who approved the settlement said he'd never seen such a clear pattern of abuse of authority and recommended that the state legislature look into better oversight of HOA board members. But wait, there's more. About a month after the settlement was finalized, I got a visit from an investigator with the state attorney general's office. They were looking into possible criminal charges related to the contractor kickback scheme. It turns out that several of the contractors she had been working with were unlicensed and doing substandard work. One family had paid nearly $20,000 for foundation repairs that were completely unnecessary and actually made their house less structurally sound. The investigator told me that my documentation of her behavior had been crucial in establishing the pattern they needed to build their case. All those fines she sent us and the threatening letters became evidence of her systematic approach to intimidating homeowners. 6 weeks ago, she was arrested on charges of fraud, extortion, and conspiracy. The local news covered it extensively, and it was pretty surreal seeing someone who had made my life miserable being led away in handcuffs. The trial is set for next year, but her lawyer is already talking about a plea deal. The prosecutor told my lawyer that they have enough evidence to put her away for several years if she doesn't cooperate. Meanwhile, our original neighborhood has become a completely different place. The new HOA board actually asked the residents for input on rule changes and got rid of a bunch of the ridiculous regulations that nobody wanted. They implemented a policy that board members can't issue fines or violations without approval from at least 2 other board members. They also set up an appeals process so homeowners can challenge decisions they think are unfair. Property values in our neighborhood have gone up significantly, partly because word got out that we don't have a tyrannical HOA anymore. Several people have told us they specifically chose to buy houses here because they heard about how we handled the situation with the former board president. The new board president is a retired teacher who actually knocks on your door to talk to you before issuing any violations. She's helped several neighbors work out solutions to problems instead of just hitting them with fines. Last month, they organized a neighborhood barbecue in the community park and invited everyone to bring their classic cars if they had them. I brought the 1967 Mustang I restored in my workshop, and it was a huge hit with the kids in the neighborhood. 3 other neighbors have asked me to help them design workshops or garage additions for their properties. Turns out a lot of people in our community have hobbies that require more space than a standard garage provides. The former board president's house went up for sale right after she was arrested. It sold for about $15,000 less than similar houses in the neighborhood, probably because everyone knew about the legal troubles associated with the previous owner. My wife and I have started hosting an annual classic car show in our neighborhood as a fundraiser for the local children's hospital. Last year we raised over $8,000, and this year we're expecting to double that amount. The whole experience taught me that standing up to bullies doesn't just help you, it helps everyone who comes after you. If I had just paid those bogus fines and followed her demands, she would have kept abusing her authority and probably would have gotten away with the fraud scheme for years longer. My lawyer told me that our case was the first one where someone had properly documented everything and fought back with the right legal strategy. Most people just paid the fines or moved away rather than challenging the HOA authority. I still get messages from people dealing with similar situations asking for advice. The main thing I tell them is to document everything and never assume that someone in authority actually has the authority they claim to have. The other important lesson is that doing your homework during major purchases can save you a lot of trouble later. If we hadn't discovered that paperwork issue with our second lot, we never would have been in a position to fight back effectively. These days I spend most of my free time in the workshop, but now I'm not just working on my own projects. I've been helping other car enthusiasts in the area with their restoration work, and it's turned into a nice little community of people who share the same passion. The workshop has become kind of a neighborhood gathering spot on weekends. Kids come by to learn about tools and mechanical work, and their parents often stick around to chat and share stories about their own project cars. Looking back on everything that happened, I'm actually grateful for the conflict with the former HOA president. If she hadn't tried to bully us, I never would have learned about my legal rights, met all the great people who helped us fight back, or gotten involved in the larger effort to hold her accountable for years of abuse. The workshop turned out even better than I originally planned, and the process of fighting for it brought our neighborhood together in ways that wouldn't have happened otherwise. Sometimes the best outcomes come from the most difficult challenges. I still have that folder with all the original documentation from our case. My lawyer told me to keep it as a reminder that knowledge and preparation are the best weapons against people who try to abuse their authority. The classic car community has embraced our story as an example of how standing up for your rights can lead to positive changes for everyone. I've been invited to speak at several car shows about the importance of knowing your property rights and not backing down from bullies. The former board president is currently out on bail waiting for her trial, but she's not allowed to live in any community with an HOA as part of her bail conditions. I heard she's renting an apartment across town and working as a cashier at a grocery store. It's hard to feel sorry for someone who caused so much trouble for so many people. But I do think her story shows how power can corrupt people and turn them into something they probably never intended to become. Our neighborhood newsletter recently did a feature story about the whole situation, calling it a turning point that transformed our community from a place ruled by fear into a place where neighbors actually work together to solve problems. The best part is watching my neighbors enjoy their properties without constantly worrying about getting violations for minor issues. People are actually using their yards and common areas now instead of just trying to stay invisible and avoid drawing attention from the HOA board. So that's the final update on my HOA battle. Justice was served, the bad guy got arrested, our neighborhood became a better place to live, and I got my dream workshop plus some extra money from the settlement. Sometimes standing up to bullies really does pay off in ways you never expected. The workshop that started this whole mess is now the centerpiece of a thriving community of car enthusiasts and neighbors who actually like each other. I'd say that's a pretty good ending to what started as a really frustrating situation. The next one is a malicious compliance story. I had a job as a call center agent. The pay was garbage and the work was horrible. But despite all that, I really did enjoy what I did. The contract changed each campaign, with some being canceled and the call center reps shuffled into the next. If you were really good, you were placed in DirecTV. I was placed there. I could tell you many stories about DirecTV. How they lied to people about movies being HD when sun flares happened. Just sell SD. No one can tell the difference. How they really thought having the rep's highest sellers pick the toppings for the manager's pizza party was a good idea. Anchovies. I picked anchovies. How they forced people to take overtime with prizes that they canceled afterwards. How much of a meat grinder it was, and how it was normal to come into work with wiped screens. I'd survived several wipes, or that is, reset computers and clean desks for the people who could not sell. But this one isn't about how horrible the place was, it's about an argument with HR. See, I was pretty good at sales as much as I hated it. This alteration was over a remote control I'd waved, and how I could have spun it into a sale instead. I went back to my desk with a fake write-up for some BS mistake and pulled up the sales charts fuming. I was pretty sure my time there was coming to an end. And then I found Dog TV. It was a glitch in the system where it was not high enough to count as anything other than a free for a month offer available to every customer, but it counted as a premium sale. Probably cause no one in their life ever sold it. Dog TV was special. So Dog TV is TV for dogs. Yep, it's a thing. It bills itself as a show for dogs to enjoy. Adding it to the account was free for the first month, just like some of the other shows, except it was cheaper. And it was a very good sale for me, right up there with selling a full account upgrade at full price. And adding it allowed me to do pretty much anything I wanted to the account. It seemed to act like a retention offer. My sales went parabolic. I'd always been good, but now every manager used me as the shining example. All the perks they gave to top sellers were mine. I won gas cards, quality didn't say a word when I made a mistake on a call. My surveys were all 10S as I carefully explained to every customer if by some chance you don't want to pay for Dog TV. Just call in by this date. I waived service calls, offered pretty much anything for free with all exclusive perk of Dog TV. Oh, you missed a due date? Waived. You need a service call? Waived. Want a free upgrade to the best shows, free equipment, free setup? How about an additional remote? Waived. I could even offer you a month of service for free if you got Dog TV, and I did. That's correct. I will give you 1 month of free service in exchange for adding Dog TV. Just call in by this date to cancel it, or it's going to charge you. I'm so sorry that you missed your payment and have a late fee. How about we waive this if I add a television show for dogs to your account? It looks like the last call was accidentally dropped due to you telling the last person to jam the satellite up there. Know what can fix this? A free service call with a free trial of Dog TV. I remember one person who called in because their remote wasn't working. I gave them a free remote, free equipment, free service call, 1 month of free service, and made sure it was marked as not rented in the system. In exchange for a 1 month free channel of Dog TV, they were ecstatic. Just promise me you mark the survey as 10, I said, quietly marking their service call as priority. You bet your bottom biscuits, they replied. Fantastic. Would you like a free movie? Another guy called high as shit, angry about his bill. The company has charged him the fee of an HD box when he only had SD. The correct fix here was apologize for the bill issue and offer a waiver if we could lock him into a sale. I had a different idea. Yeah, it sucks. We charged you the wrong fee. How about a free upgrade? Huh? How so? This guy was sharp even while high. So if I add dog TV to your account, I won't waive the charges. Dogs? Like dogs chasing balls and shit? Exactly like that. Huh? How's that make any sense? So IL leveled with him. It's a special offer and it's not going to be here for long. But why dog TV? What the hell is that? Why would any company want to sell a damn show about dogs? Well, you know, man. Dogs are a man's best friend. Weed made it make perfect sense. Yeah, man. That's it. Yeah, that's it. Asterisk inhaling asterisk. Alright, so you got the pen and paper? Yep. Okay. Write in big letters, cancel dog TV. I'd have paid to be a fly on the wall when he received the equipment the next week. I became the top salesperson across the entire company. They pointed a camera at my face and asked, so tell us, how did you become the star salesman? I looked right into the phone camera for the video that would be sent to every employee. Not even employee, I was to be the talking head for all the new trainees to watch. Unpaid, of course, what an honor. Tips from the top or some BS. Everyone had to watch it. No one did, so they started writing you up if you couldn't answer one top tip for talented. I forget the last T. I did not want to be in this stupid show, but it was implied I'd get written up otherwise. Well, folks, it's easy. All you gotta do is sell, even if it's something like dog TV. What a great answer. And what's your favorite thing to sell? What a dumb-ass stupid. Why, that would be dog TV. Dog TV. I've never heard of that one. Oh, people who want to superstar their sales should check it out. What's it about? I'll happily tell you for $17.99 a month. Asterisk, fake laughter asterisk. As a top salesperson, I was able to buy many things with sales points, and before I left, I placed a remote control on HR's desk. And then I left the building forever, as I had an interview. I found out later, though, a mutual connection that they had techs delete the emails right from people's inboxes to Dog TV was a sale, all right. One that people called en masse to cancel. One that caused who knows how many thousands of waivers as hundreds of people caught on and started selling at the top channel. The leaderboard dissolved into chaos as managers had an all-hands-on meeting as DirecTV was screaming at them for failing every metric possible while selling to every customer who called. One thing I forgot to mention is that the system turned inwards. The same way people were replaced for not hitting their goals was shifted to the people in charge of the facility. DirecTV almost canceled the entire contract with that call center, and I don't know what they had to do to keep it in place. I do know that they refused to speak with me on the phone when I called to return my equipment. Me being me, I had those notes seized. They read in all caps, "Do not interact with this past employee. MRK RID is paid. No SRVCL, no Sale NOCA CC, all to quality order from OPE." NOCA is a weird one. It means no quality access, and I only saw it once on a VIP account. AKA don't check the call for CSR issues. Did they think I was going to brainwash quality or something odd? I'll tell people today I was the top salesperson globally for a large company. It's not a lie. They just erased my name from every single mention of the sales charts and tried to take back the award they sent. Anyway, thank you for watching.